and Arthur would be struck in the chest with machine gun fire. Arthur would then wake up in a field hospital back at Bataan.
That boy survived, boy. Hey, yo, he got $2,500, got some juggernaut drink. You know what I'm saying? My man back in the field.
Important background info: December 7th, 1941, Japan attacks America at Pearl Harbor. Okay, everybody knows what Pearl Harbor is, but what most people don't realize is that while Japan was attacking America, they were also simultaneously launching attacks on pretty much every other nation and island in the Pacific. Hong Kong, Wake Island, Guam, Malaya, Singapore, Thailand, all of these nations and islands would fall to the Japanese within 3 months.
Yo, Japan was out here just trying to get mad ring outs. They tried to turn it to a Royal Rumble. Hey, listen. Hey, that's crazy.
All of them except for one, the Philippines. If you don't know, at this point in time, the Philippines is actually a territory under the United States of America, who had assumed control of the Philippines from Spain after the Spanish-American War in 1898. Because of that, there was already 22,000 soldiers there. Now, don't get me wrong, they weren't expecting to get attacked. The majority of these soldiers, 12,000 of them, are non-combat related jobs or they're Filipino reservists. But that other 10,000 was the Philippine Scouts. And I cannot stress to you enough that these guys are absolute gangsters. They were founded in 1901 by the U.S. Army. It is essentially Filipino and Filipino-American soldiers being
shout out to B-Soul's people. They out here with the choppers.
Led by American officers. And they are experts in guerrilla, anti-guerrilla, and jungle warfare.
Boy, look.
American officers. And they are experts.
I didn't even see them boys before they popped up.
In guerrilla, anti-guerrilla, and jungle warfare. These are the guys that fought the Tan Sung rebels during the Moro Rebellion. They are literally the men that America's patron saint of hole punching, John Moses Browning, created the Colt 45 1911 for. They are the direct predecessor of the Philippines' current special forces, the Scout Rangers, and they are probably some of, if not the last people on the planet that you want to fight in the jungle. And one of the American officers leading these men—
Bro, did y'all see them videos of the Vietnam traps they were setting? Where like you step into a hole and it keeps your foot in. They had snake pits. They was not playing in Korea, boy.
None other than Arthur Wehrmuth, son of a World War I veteran that grew up in Chicago. For high school, he would attend Northwestern Military Academy, and after graduating from there, he would be denied by West Point because the only thing he excelled at in life was football and winning fistfights. His football coach said that defensively, he was a tough man to get through, and offensively, many points were scored through holes that he opened. Despite being rejected by West Point, he still wanted to be a military officer, so he would go to college at Loyola University in Chicago, where he would join the ROTC program and get his bachelor's degree in bacteriology, which would later become known as microbiology.
That's crazy.
So after graduating from college and receiving his commission as a military officer, he would write the United States War Department request—
You said this better than my actual history class. I learned more in the past 2 minutes than I have this year. That's what I'm saying, bruh. Listen, the internet, they be having some good stuff. You just got to learn how to find the good videos
to get put on active duty. He would get accepted and sent over to the Philippines, where he would arrive in January of 1941 to train with the Philippine Scouts. Fast forward 11 months later, the Japanese show up and they attack. Filipino and American forces are not ready. They are outmanned, outgunned in every conceivable way. At this point, leadership decides their best bet is to pool all of their resources and have everybody move to the Bataan Peninsula. They are essentially going to back themselves into a corner, draw one line in the sand, and desperately try to hold that line long enough for American reinforcements to—
Nah, them boys is like that, all right? Imagine rounding your whole team up, bruh. And y'all say, all right, look, we about to stand right here and we about to lock in. We not gonna spread out. We not doing no flanks. Imagine Nuketown, right? You right in the back, in the back of the freaking house, right? In the backyard, and y'all just gonna do right there and let everybody come to you. That's crazy.
Show up. It's not a great plan, but it's pretty much the only thing they can do. And if that wasn't bad enough, there's actually a problem with that. The Japanese are advancing so fast that they're going to be able to cut off the route to Bataan before everybody can actually make it there.
How did they know they were going
Arthur Wehrmuth and the rest of the 57th Infantry Regiment are going to have to go and fight the Japanese on the front line, desperately trying to hold them off long enough for all the other people to retreat. General Wainwright gives them the order to dig in and hold, and that's exactly what Arthur and his men do. At this point, Arthur is in command of—
We have no juice, but I'll let you— we'll do half. Look, for mixed shots, we'll do half.
Delta Company of the 57th Infantry Regiment, which is roughly 150 Philippine scouts. And for the next 2 weeks, they go toe-to-toe with the Japanese army, desperately trying to hold them off long enough for everybody else to retreat. This was how Arthur and his men would spend Christmas of 1941, dealing heavy losses to the enemy. But by New Year's, they had faced the same thing and endured heavy losses themselves. By the first week of January 1942, Arthur's 150 men had dwindled down to just 37. At this point, it became clear that they were not going to be able to hold the front line, at which point they were ordered to retreat back to Bataan. But Arthur had a plan to slow down the Japanese even further. Arthur volunteers to sneak back into a city that recently fell to the Japanese by himself, because in that city there's a wooden bridge, and that wooden bridge is going to prove vital for the Japanese to quickly move troops further inland. And if Arthur can get rid of it, it is going to severely hamper their...
Nah, it's on a timer, so I think it's like every 30 minutes you can redeem. Don't worry. Listen. I put in all the failed proofs to all my channel point redemptions.
Ability to do so.
Hey, look, if you're on YouTube watching this, head over to the channel. We be having lit lives. You know what I'm saying? Twitch / Holla Crazy. You know what I'm saying?
So Arthur is going to sneak into this city by himself with demo charges, his Thompson submachine gun, and 2 5-gallon jugs of gasoline. He is then going to make his way to Main Street under the cover of night, dump the gasoline all over the buildings, and light Main Street on fire. Once all the buildings in Main Street are engulfed in flames, that is a signal to the Philippine scouts miles away that they're going to start dropping artillery on that area, and Arthur is going to use that as a distraction to make his way over to this bridge, place some demo charges, and blow it up. And that's pretty much exactly what happens. Arthur sneaks into town, manages to light Main Street on fire, waits for the fire to grow a little bit, at which point Arthur knows the artillery fire is coming right on top of him any second, and he just has to make a run for this bridge. But this bridge is wide out in the open right next to Main Street, and he is about to run essentially down Main Street towards a bridge that's being guarded, and there is hundreds of Japanese soldiers everywhere.
All right, that seems easy enough.
Thankfully,
1v100? That boy better be John Wick.
Most of them are distracted by the fact that most of Main Street is on fire, and not a lot of them take notice of the fact that there is now a 190-pound American sprinting down Main Street towards the bridge. But eventually a couple of them would take notice and begin firing at Arthur, and he would be struck in the calf and fall to the ground.
That's crazy.
And right then is when the artillery rounds started dropping. And as soon as the artillery rounds started dropping, Arthur waited there for a second, and then when he thought they were all distracted again, he got up and continued to run towards the bridge. He then proceeded to place the demolition charges, blowing up the bridge before disappearing back into the jungle and making his way back to his men. So Arthur and his men make it to Bataan. At this point, you have to put yourself in Arthur's shoes. He is one of the highest ranking officers on the ground. He was just in charge of 150 men 2 weeks ago, and only 37 of them survived. That's not necessarily his fault. He was placed in a completely unwinnable situation, but ultimately...
Hey, we might have to throw that on a watch list, man. We might have to do that.
He's not going to feel great about himself losing that many of his men. He's been living in the Philippines for almost a year, training with the Philippine Scouts. He's an expert in camouflage, an expert in jungle warfare, and an expert in guerrilla warfare tactics. And he decides that rather than lose any more of his men, he is going to go out past the front line into enemy territory by himself and terrorize the enemy. So that's what he does. He sleeps during the day, and every night he grabs his Thompson submachine gun, 2 Colt 45 1911s, and a bunch of grenades, and heads off into the jungle by himself to utilize hit-and-run tactics against the Japanese, conducting guerrilla...
Yo, bruh, trying to solo a whole army? Yo, this man, he might be one of them, all right? He might be one of them. I don't want no smoke, all right? Wherever his family is these days, listen, round of applause to y'all. I know y'all got his genetics. I'm out the way.
warfare. And on one of these missions, he's a couple miles into enemy territory from the front.
You said 3 weeks since Holla uploaded to that gaming channel. Listen, tomorrow we are playing Among Us, all right? That'll be the next video, and we're going to play September 7th after that.
Line when he hears a bunch of Japanese soldiers coming up on him. So he quickly hides in some bushes and camouflages himself. And 30 Japanese soldiers, an entire platoon, comes walking past. One of them almost steps on him, and he's just laying there dead quiet, trying not to breathe, and the troops are making their way towards the front line. And Arthur knows he has to do something, because they're either going to launch an attack or they're getting reconnaissance to scout the front line. Either way, these guys gotta
get rid of him.
He knows that even if he pops up with the element of surprise from behind them with his Thompson submachine gun, he's still gonna lose that firefight. So he does the only thing he can think to do, and that is to get up and start walking in the column with these guys as if he was one of them. So
he's cooking right now. This is crazy.
Literally following in this Japanese column, walking through the jungle towards the front line, at which point he decides, hey, I got to make sure these guys don't look back and actually try to get a look at me because I'm wearing a different uniform. they're gonna notice. So he decides that every time one of them steps on a twig or makes a noise, he's gonna shh, so they be more quiet. Just reassuring that, like, oh, that's obviously not an enemy behind me. It's somebody trying to get me to be quiet because they're on my side.
Whoever is last in line, though, should have known that they were last in line. Why is somebody shushing behind me? That's what I would have said.
Arthur Wehrmuth has just switched gears from John Rambo to Bugs Bunny fucking with Elmer Fudd. And he follows these guys through the jungle for miles, just shushing them the entire way. And then when they finally get up to the front line, Arthur knows that he has to do something. He has to alert his guys that they're about to attack. So he does the only thing he could think to do.
Might do that.
He quietly pulls a pin from one of his grenades and then acts like he tripped on something, stumbling to the man in front of him, grabbing a hold of him for balance. And when he grabs a hold of him, he hands the grenade to him right in the guy's chest. That guy obviously grabs it, and Arthur runs off into the jungle. The Japanese soldier's like, wait, what? Oh God. Boom! He blows up. Then Arthur turns around with his Thompson and opens fire on the rest of them. This obviously alerts his men, and they start opening fire too. They completely wipe out this Japanese platoon. After this and other events like it, the Japanese start to fear Arthur, referring to him as the Ghost of Bataan, while the American forces are referring to him as the one-man army. At this point, he gets his notoriety, and other experienced Filipino scouts start volunteering to go out with him, but he doesn't want to lose any more men, so he keeps refusing, and he keeps refusing, and finally...
Yo, imagine 1v20 in, 1v5 in, 1v13 in, and you like, hey, you know what? my KD ratio right now is crazy. Y'all stay here. If something happened to me, then y'all, you know what I'm saying, start cooking. That's insane.
One brave Filipino scout that he can't refuse because this guy will kick his ass. His name is Sergeant Crispin Jacob, aka Jock. He is described as being 6'4", 220 pounds, and Arthur Wehrmuth himself said that he is half Filipino, half Oriental giant, and he begins going out on these missions with Arthur.
That's
and
crazy.
Time after time, Jock manages to save Captain Wehrmuth's life. At some point, it becomes apparent that the Japanese are intercepting frontline communications, but here's the thing, these communications aren't done over radio, they can't just be intercepted wirelessly. These are hardwired communications with a physical wire just strung out on the ground. This means that somewhere along that wire, the Japanese have tapped into it physically, and Arthur Wehrmuth and Jock are sent out at night to investigate. So they're tracing this wire down all night long, just following this wire, and at some point in the darkness, they lose track of it. So they're trying to re-find where the wire went, they're looking. Arthur gets his legs tangled up in a vine, and he falls down. No big deal, he pulls out his knife, goes to cut the vine. Oh shit,
it's
wait,
the wire.
on. This is the wire. At which point he looks over to yell at Jock like, hey, I found it, and he looks, and there is a ditch with a Japanese soldier and a bunch of equipment sitting in it, looking at him like he's dumbfounded. Arthur quickly draws his gun as the Japanese soldier draws his, and they have a good old-fashioned quick draw contest, which Arthur wins. Arthur then...
Yo, he's garbage! The dude is trash! How are you right there? He falls down, cuts the wire, and you're just looking at him. I would have upped the toolie and blamed it on him.
Making it back to his feet, is then tackled by two...
And you still got quick draw on? You're done. Yo.
Japanese soldiers into the ditch, one of them stabbing him with a bayonet through his arm, pinning him to the dirt wall inside of this trench, at which point he yells for Jock. Jock then runs up to the edge of the trench and sees Wehrmuth inside the trench fighting off two Japanese soldiers with his arm pinned to the wall. He takes aim with his rifle at the Japanese soldiers and then realizes that he doesn't want to accidentally hit Wehrmuth in the middle of the fight while it's still dark out. So he jumps in the trench and proceeds to beat the two Japanese soldiers to death with his rifle. He then destroys the radio equipment, helps Wehrmuth pull the bayonet.
Yo, it's 3v1 and y'all couldn't cook my mans? Maybe they was trying to take prisoners though. They was trying to get them some POWs, bruh.
Out of his arm, he starts bleeding everywhere.
Bust all over him with the clip is crazy.
Bandages that up and gets Wehrmuth back to the hospital, at which point the Ghost of Bataan is now bedridden and on doctor's orders is not allowed to leave. And while all that's going on, word finally makes it back to America that there's some crazy 190-pound ex-football player running around in the jungles of the Philippines showing the Japanese what's up. And this is the one shining piece of good news that America clings onto in the days after Pearl Harbor. Arthur Wehrmuth unknowingly becomes an overnight celebrity in America. He is taking up all the headlines. They are making comic books about him and his partner Jock. He is inside of bubblegum packets telling the story of them finding the tap in the communication line. Arthur Wehrmath is now one of the first main characters in World War II fighting for America, and he is vital for overall American morale. And just like a main character, he decides that he's not going to stay bedridden. He violates doctor's orders, checks himself out of the hospital, and gets back in the fight. At this point, the Japanese have flooded the entire surrounding area with snipers that are picking off American and Filipino soldiers day and night, and Arthur Wehrmath has to be the man that does something about it. But considering that there's so many of them and that Jock just saved his life, he comes to the conclusion that having some friends around isn't exactly a bad idea. So he starts taking volunteers to join his special anti-sniper unit, and 84 of the meanest, most experienced Philippine scouts volunteered. Not only were these guys counter-sniping the snipers, there was also a bunch of them out in the jungle, camouflaged and hidden.
They was in the field quick-scoping. This is
waiting for the sniper to fire so they knew where he was, and then they were going to come at him with machetes and Colt 45s. Throughout February and March of 1942, Arthur Wehrmath, Jock, and their anti-sniper unit were credited with taking out 500 Japanese soldiers.
Bro, it's Captain America.
And this is considered to be a very...
Nah, Buddy is Winter Soldier, all right? Captain America was doing his thing, but Winter Soldier with that Glockiana in the field, come on, man.
Conservative estimate. Then in late March, Command would ask for volunteers to do a nearly impossible mission of recapturing the high point of Mount Phuket. At which point, Arthur immediately volunteered and then asked his men who of them would also like to volunteer, and they all did. Arthur and his men then set off to try to complete this nearly impossible mission. It is a 36-hour hike through enemy territory just to get to the objective. I'm gonna send you another video real quick. Along that 36-hour hike, they are credited with taking out an additional 65 Japanese soldiers. Then upon reaching Mount Phuket, they would launch an attack, and it would fail. Arthur would lose over half of his men. Having failed to take the high ground at Mount Phuket, Arthur and his surviving men would retreat back to Bataan. Along the way, they would get ambushed by a machine gun position, and Arthur would be struck in the chest with machine gun fire. Arthur would then wake up in a field hospital back at Bataan.
That boy survived, boy. Hey, yo, he got $2,500, got some juggernaut drink. You know what I'm saying? My man back in the field.
His rib.
Bro, is Modern Warfare 3 zombies good? Because I ain't played zombies in a minute, bro.
Into his lung, and he was now battling an infection. I would assume they didn't have antibiotics to give him because at this point, Bataan was
Captain
in rough
Bucky
shape.
played Metal Gear Solid in the jungle,
and they were running out of every supply imaginable, desperately trying to hold out long enough to get resupplied and reinforced. Arthur would remain in the hospital for 10 days, and every single day that passed, it became more and more apparent that they were losing and Japan was going to win. At this point, Arthur, against doctor's orders, with pus oozing from his chest, still battling an infection, would don his gear and go back out with his men one last time. Arthur and his anti-sniper unit desperately tried to hold the line against the Japanese, but due to sheer overwhelming numbers, they were beaten back over and over again. And during one of their retreats on April 9th, Arthur would slip down the side of a cliff, smacking his head on a rock, rendered unconscious.
He gotta survive, though. Rendered unconscious.
He would again wake up in the hospital, but this time when he awoke, he would come...
The Japanese hospital.
Come to find out that the Japanese had completely taken over Bataan. The Americans had been forced to surrender, and General MacArthur had fled to Australia. This is absolutely the worst possible outcome because the Imperial Japanese believe that if you surrender in battle, you lose your honor, and if you lose your honor, you are no longer human. You are subhuman and no longer eligible for human rights, which gives them the justification to treat you however they want. Arthur
waiting on Holla to play out last one.
Having been shot in the leg, stabbed in the arm.
Bro keeps respawning in the hospital. Hey, that's a fact, though. That's a fact.
With a bayonet, shot in the chest, concussed, and battling an infection, and he is probably one of the luckiest men there. Because pretty much everybody else is forced to participate in the Bataan Death March, and I don't really want to get too far into what that is and what happened.
Buddy low-key immortal from Invincible, low-key.
But suffice it to say, over 30% of everybody else is going to die in captivity as a prisoner of war. And if Arthur Wehrmath were also forced to go down the Bataan Death March, he would absolutely be a member of that 30% given his current condition. I can't verify this for sure, but I think the reason that they let Arthur Wehrmath have a chance at surviving is because technically he never surrendered. He was fatally wounded in battle, and when he woke up, he had already been captured. So I think that maybe the Japanese didn't look down on him as subhuman because he didn't forfeit his honor. That's crazy. He literally fought with all those debuffs, man. And by sheer luck, he survived and woke up in captivity. After making his recovery, now Major Wehrmath would find himself being the highest-ranking military officer around, making him the leader of the few remaining Americans that were lucky enough to escape the Bataan Death March. And for the next year, they are used as forced labor to build Japanese airstrips. One of the Americans under the command of Arthur was a man by the name of Elliot Smesler, who later on in life would write a book of memoirs about his time as a prisoner of war under the Japanese. In that book, he wrote this, quote, The first year of my captivity, I worked on building an airfield for the Japanese. Life wasn't bad because they were afraid of the major in charge. His name was Major Wehrmuth, and the Japanese called him Wehrmuth the Lion. Now, I think this is actually further evidence
that is the definition is, come in your trap, take over your trap, all right? They captured this man, and he went in there and became the leader. That's crazy.
Japanese don't believe that he actually surrendered and didn't lose his honor in battle.
Yo, Holla,
because
where
they're
can you
still
watch
scared
your
of him,
Dead Rising
despite the fact
gameplays?
that he is their prisoner.
They should be on my YouTube channel. They should be on Big Holla. Maybe I should move them over to the Holla channel, the gameplay channel. Maybe. I don't know.
And he definitely didn't surrender because while Arthur and the men under his command did build the airstrip they were told to build, they sabotaged it so that the concrete would buckle underneath the weight of Japanese heavy bombers, not only damaging the airstrip, but the bombers as well. Yeah, despite being a POW for over a year, Arthur and the men under his command are still finding a way to slow down the Japanese military. Because of this, Arthur and the men under his command are sent to live on a hell ship known as the Oryoku Maru, which, if you don't know, a hell ship is essentially a POW camp on a boat, and they are infamous for their horrific living conditions. The only thing worse than being a starving POW is being a starving POW on a boat with no shade while you're seasick. Then on January 9th, 1945, the USS Hornet, an American aircraft carrier, would mistake the hell ship for a troop transport and bomb it. This bombing would kill over 250 Americans instantly, wounding and injuring almost every other American on board, including Arthur Wehrmuth. Despite having his wounds go untreated while starving to death, Arthur still somehow managed to survive, making it to Japan to be inside of a POW camp there, where he would later be freed after Japan surrendered.
Dog, this man is invincible. Bro, first, get shot in the chest by a machine gun. Second, slip off of a cliff, hit your head on a rock. Get captured, become a Japanese POW. Get put on a POW ship that America came through and said, hey, yo, friendly fire, bow, all right? Blows it up, and you one of the survivors. Get taken back to Japan, become a POW again. This is crazy.
When Arthur Wehrmuth shipped off from America to the Philippines in 1941, he weighed 190 pounds. When he finally got to return home to America after World War II, he weighed only 105. Woo! He would then be awarded 4 Purple Hearts, the Silver Star, and the Distinguished Service Cross. He is credited with 116 kills and will go down in history as the one-man army of Bataan.
Bro, who got the most confirmed kills in military history? I gotta know, bro. I have to know.
This, he credited his men, saying that 90% of what he was able to accomplish was due to the Philippine scouts and that they were the best soldiers in the world. So, in conclusion, the fall of WICK Island and the Philippines are considered to be some of the first losses dealt to America.
You got more
during World War
electrician?
II. But
yo, this is a fire channel, though. Look, we gotta hit that sub button. We find fire channels.
There were also some of the first victories. As stories of heroes like that of Hank Elrod and the Marines of WICK Island. And
bro, yo, Mr. Ballin, appreciate you, big dog. You know what I'm saying? You gave us the horror stories, but the fat electrician, he giving us the army. Bro, listen, I remember, I think it was a 5 Finger Death Punch. They dropped the song, right? And it was like a military song. I also watched infographics. I think it was infographics. I think it was like the F. It was one of the jets, the F something, right? That America has, like their B-2 bomber. And I learned about the military, and I said, listen, whatever the military doing, y'all got it. All right, listen, y'all doing the protection. Listen. How much y'all want the taxes raised? Y'all can have the money. All right. Hey, pray for them boys, okay? My respect goes out. But yo, hearing the military stories? Come on now.
Arthur Wehrmuth and his Philippine scouts reached the rest of the world. It would become clear to America that this war was winnable, and it would become clear to Japan that they had a lot bigger fight on their hands than they ever anticipated. Thank you for watching. Best way to support the channel is go check out thefatelectrician.com. Quack bang, out.
Bro. We found a banger channel right now, chat. We done found the banger channel. The Limping Lady, Deadliest. We gotta watch that. Deadliest Spy? Bro, I've been wanting to listen to some real spy stories. Cause I might become Agent 47. I ain't gonna lie. I'm joking. I'm never gonna do that.
So when the metal hit his mug, he just sunk in place. 100K Holla, chillin' Bahamas. Come home to your crib and throw in your mama.